So, Mike, why don't we start with tell me about the 20th season?
Well, we will be starting off at Match on October 17th with our program called Southern Revival, which features work that I've really been hoping that we could present for years, which is Samuel Barber's really wonderful Knoxville Summer of 1915. And we've built a program that has a bunch of pieces by American composers sort of conversing with that really astounding piece of music. The composers that are complementing that piece are all African American composers from early in the 20th century all the way to the present day. And there's a really interesting dialogue between the pieces that showcase the world that Barber imagined through his piece, which was a really descriptive, almost surreal journey through sort of like a child's perspective of the world and their family and society. And all of these other composers have works that sort of speak a response to that piece. Yeah. The text for Barber's Knoxville, Summer of 1915, is a really beautiful passage from this great prose piece by James Agee, which is called "The Deaf in the Family." And it's an incredible passage that just sort of meanders psychologically through the mind of a child as they're laying in the front yard with their family around them and just sort of observing the world around them on a peaceful summer evening. And it's really quite a remarkable use of the text. Samuel Barber was absolutely brilliant with the way that he captured poetry through music. And this piece is really interesting because it's actually more like a prose piece than a poem. We all know his art songs, which are some of the most beautiful portrayals of poetry in music that we have in our repertoire. But this particular text setting is it really has this like sort of like, I don't want to say psychedelic, but it's sort of like this very sort of untethered passage from something that's very real and present to things that are imagined in the future that this main character sort of perceives about their family life and the community around them. I can think of very few pieces that I know of that capture this incredible sense of how precious and ephemeral things are, and how just behind the veil of things that are with us is perhaps the moment where we may lose all of those things. And it actually creates this very powerful sense of why things should be valued in the present and what it means to have community and to have family, and how meaningful those things are and how comforting it is to exist with those things, but also how powerful it is to us within those moments when those things might not be with us.
When you create a program, do you often find a piece as a companion or something that could highlight that piece, say, in a different way?
Well, actually, it's very interesting that you said this. We've been wanting to present the Barber as an anchor for our program for many years, but one of the things that we like to do when we present an important piece like that is to find things that help the audience to sort of understand the context of where that piece comes from or how we value that today. And I became aware of a set of songs by Sean Aperio, American composer who currently lives outside of Chicago. This setting of two poems called Two Black Churches. It's two poems by two different poets, but both of them are about more of an experience that very much contrasts with the experience portrayed by the main character in Samuel Barber's piece. While Samuel Barber's main character is exploring and observing the world around them in a way that is very comforted by the things that surround the main character, the characters that are the focal point for Sean Peblo's song cycle actually show great value for familial life and for the community around them, but they also reveal how harrowing it is through the years of segregation, through the interior legacy of racism in the South. And it leaves a completely different impression about what the variety of experiences that people had coming up through the 40s, 50s, and 60s in America in similar locations. The program actually explores Knoxville, Birmingham, and then also Charleston in the poetry and portraying events that have sort of happened through the civil rights movement and through just that basic period of time that we know. Some people are so nostalgic for it. Other people look back at it as a time of where we made great strides in progress and social equality. And those things are both true simultaneously and portrayed in music. And I think for that reason alone, those pieces start to enter a conversation in the way that we presented on the program.
So when did you come up with the title Southern Revival?
Well, I thought it was kind of an interesting aspect of the two anchors of the program, which is the Samuel Barber piece and the song cycle by Sean Aperio, that they all focused on southern locations: Knoxville, Birmingham, and Charleston. And Knoxville is the setting of James Agee's prose piece. Birmingham and Charleston were both scenes of terrible acts of terrorism against people during the civil rights movement. And these are all contemporaneous. So 1915 might be on the early side of things, which is reaching back into history far enough that Americans tend to feel that it's a very nostalgic portrayal of childhood and family life. And certainly Birmingham and Charleston kind of come a little bit later in the timeline, but this shows a progression to present day, where I think when we're looking back, we see such a variety of perspectives of our own history through music.
And what about the various genres in this? You say you have songs, and there's some string orchestra, string quartets, some gym orchestra in it as well.
Yeah, and we're complementing these larger pieces on the program. We have some music for orchestra and for string quartet by Florence Price, William Grant Still as well, both great composers that are part of our tradition and very important in the lineage of African-American composers. They both are composers that wrote in a great variety of style that people are coming to understand a little bit more. I would say over the past 10 years, these composers have gotten significant playtime on concert programs, and deservedly so. Their music represents a good mix, I would say, between late romanticism and the American style with the incorporation of folk and our own indigenous elements. There's great tribute paid to the traditions of gospel styles and folk songs, and the way that music has been used as part of the African-American experience historically is very, very interesting. And we find that intersecting in their music. So that also sort of informs and builds a bit of an aura around the discussion that's happening amongst the anchor pieces on the program here.
So the title of the program is Southern Revival, but we hear you're actually highlighting two composers that are very much alive now and quite successful. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Sean Aperio he's currently on the composition faculty for Wheaton University outside of Chicago. He's a Nigerian American composer, and he's written music of all sort of like orchestral, large chamber music, vocal music. I really think that this piece that we've got in the program really showcases a really new and important voice in writing for vocals, but a new voice in vocal literature or art song. I would say the piece is very much indebted to traditions of gospel style, jazz, improvisation, and also the music of Charles Ives. He has quite a descriptive way of writing and layering text and music. It's really quite astounding and beautiful the way that he's done it. The other composer that's alive is also really producing and doing an important body, or creating an important body of work right now, is Jessie Montgomery, who is also a former member of Catalyst Quartet. She left that position to pursue more of her compositional endeavors, and with good reason. She's really been producing quite a great deal of work, and so much of it drawing from, again, the traditions that have sort of inspired and led to where we're starting to look at African-American composers and sort of what their lineage is. And she draws from all sorts of different corners of what they've done historically, and she's also helping to sort of take the next steps in terms of where the composition is going from that lineage.
Give us your best 15 seconds of why we need to cover this program.
Well, it's a very powerful story that is being told through this music. It starts with music of Florence Price, who is a contemporary of William Grant Still. The two halves of the program both start off with these sort of established names in the compositional lineage of African-American composers in the United States. And they start off with presenting beautiful music that shows more of a nostalgic feel. And then we progress through into music by Margaret Bonds, who is also a very, very well-loved composer, mainly of songs that we know today. But she also wrote this great piano piece, which I'll be performing, called Troubled Water, which is based on the spiritual Wade into the Water. And that piece is actually, it's quite remarkable because it's a small 5-minute little paraphrase, virtuoso piano piece that's written based on a tune that most people from the South would know. It draws upon gospel style. It mixes it with beautiful romanticism, folk song styles. There's the really fun, earthy funkiness that comes out of the gospel tradition that's in there, and her sensitive harmonic language as she works through the tune grows from something that's romantic into something that's very more modern, and it's really a fun piece to hear. It's really thrilling to hear, and she does so many beautiful things with the melody and the variations she creates on it. It shows an early sense of the promise of the composer that she became. That will progress into a short piece for cello and piano by Jessie Montgomery called Peace, which is really sort of like a meditative rumination on how the pandemic sort of affected us. It was written at that time, and it was her reaction to all of the things that we were all going through as we all sort of retracted our worlds at the time. We have the song Aperio, which is a great commentary on our history as a nation, and that's also followed by a beautiful tune called Burning It Sunday by Richard Farina, which is a folk song, basically a very simple but very powerful statement about reflection on the legacy of violence and segregation and racism that we've had as part of our history. On the second half, that is all complemented by Samuel Barber's Summer of Knoxville, 1915, a beautiful sort of rendition and portrait of the nostalgia that I think that we all do feel and hope for, something as simplistic and meaningful in terms of our emotional lives and what it means to be an American today. People can get tickets from our website at the box office at Match, or you can find us on social media on all the channels. We're there. On the program, we're starting off with two string quartets that kind of couple two African American composers from two different generations together. Music by Florence Price with Jessie Montgomery. I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about those two pieces.
The two string quartets we're playing, one by Florence Price and one by Jessie Montgomery, very stylistically different. One is quite beautiful and lyrical. The other one is very virtuosic, especially the one by Jessie Montgomery is quite virtuosic. It's called Strum. You'll find that all of the instruments are playing at the gamut of their range.
Would you say that one of the pieces, since they're two composers from two different generations here, one very early mid 20th century to getting into the aughts of the new millennium, would you say that the change in style between the two of them also crosses over to things that are more technical?
Oh yeah, so the Florence Prize would have it has more traditional harmony, more traditional expression. And then the Jessie Montgomery is very modern and with mixed meter, and it's definitely also has a groove to it. Has an accelerated ending as well. Mm-hmm. I'm also playing another piece by Jessie Montgomery called Peace. She wrote that at 1 month into the pandemic, and we actually, when I read why she wrote this work, I forgot how it was. I kind of the shock of wow, we're shut down. How could this happen? And the whole world shut down. So
it was up, and it was also new.
It's also everything so constant, and it changed from day to day. Yeah, everybody's glued to their social media and news. Well, Jessie Montgomery wrote this piece, title piece. I know I keep saying that, but it's difficult to not do that. But and she was dealing with her own, acceptance of what that meant to her. And she wrote it originally, I think, for violin and piano, but it's been arranged for various instruments. Mm. It's quite strong work, only 4 to 5 minutes long, but in it has a central theme that keeps coming back. And I think it also ends kind of on a question. Mm-hmm. So I think the audience will understand in their own ways, like, they may they may remember their own questioning at that time and their own
understanding their own. Yeah, that was sort of revisiting like what was so like uncertain at the time. And the thing that I like about the piece titled Peace is that from the very beginning she's dealing with harmonies that are so close and so so hard to define. It's not even just a sense of polytonality, it's a sense of just these crunchy kind of sounds that just sort of hover, that are sort of searching for something. And I don't know that in the end that there's really even a resolution to the type of harmonic language she sets up. So it's almost kind of to me, in getting to know the piece as well, I feel like perhaps another title that could have been suited to the piece would be something like Making Peace with the Situation. There's this floating, a beautiful sense of color and the way that harmonies can be stacked on each other, and sort of like a sense of timing that's very liberal, but also continually searching for some way to get the instruments to sort of attach to each other in rhythm. There's this great flexibility and fluidity to things that one tends to feel as though it's a sense of rubato, but there's this communication between the players that's remarkable, that they sort of hover, move, and they plan shapes dynamically together, and somehow they have to catch each other. And it's really kind of beautiful how it's done in that work.
Well, what Jessie Montgomery has done is, in the beginning, it seems very ambiguous harmonically, and maybe describe the situation as ambiguous and unknown. And then if you think about a meter, you don't really feel a meter, although on the page it looks a little more simple than the way it sounds. So to the audience member, it'll sound a little bit like it's floating. But to musicians, is actually quite simple to read. So for me, that's a sign of a genius composer, where it looks a lot simpler to read, and then the audience cannot perceive how it's done. And so
the great mystery of music.
Exactly. And so so I hope that when the audience listens to this, they can feel that sense of, say, detachment, or maybe a better word for it is like, they have a grounding. The harmony is also floating, the meter's floating, and it ends in a quite pleasant way, but at the same time you don't have that grounding of the meter, of the rhythm.
Yeah, the piece almost like evaporates at the end, and just so beautifully, and it's really kind of arresting where she's done with it, I think, from the two instruments. Very nice. Very nice.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, Marlon.
Yeah.
Okay, so Marlon, maybe you can tell us a little bit about why do you think a piece like Samuel Barber's Knoxville Summer of 1915, why is it such a remarkable piece of music for people to hear?
Well, without saying the cliche things like, oh, it's just beautiful and it'll put you in a state of nostalgia, I will just say a brief thing about how art can really capture any culture, society, and moment. And I think, oddly enough, we're, in 2025, and the piece references something more than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was looking up a mere fact, just chronological fact. And it seems like the television wasn't even invented till 1926.
That's perfect.
So if you could just imagine a time that's even slower than pre-cell phone.
Yeah.
We're talking about pre-television.
Yeah.
So I think if you can get into a time machine and have a little bit, just like a 15 minutes, which is 16 minutes is how long the piece is, you get a real glimpse of what that sense of an evening is like. Southern Knoxville, Tennessee. That thing, yeah, and it's the stillness, but then the let's just say the pace, right? Because we're in a fast-paced society now, but that kind of what it means to breathe in that air, the balming breeze back then. Yeah, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So I think that's something very interesting that I don't think you can get in any concert. There's a glimpse of that age. or innocence.
I never actually stopped to think about that, like the idea that the portrayal of the scene in this piece that's taken back to a time before we had, as a family unit or as a society, had been distracted by so many things pulling us apart, or pulling for our attention.
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
pulling us apart in the sense that the attention. So you can see how the meaning between conversations back then, sitting literally,
Yeah.
you hear about it, sitting in the porch with the iced tea, and what it means to grind up the mint, to put it in all these rituals or things like that. And I think you hear that in the music, you hear that in the prose, you hear that in the way the programmatic aspect of Barber's writing, in the poem, in the prose. And so I think it's really poignant in that way.
Just hearing you talk about it, it's poignant for the sense of connection that the entire piece is actually all about. It's about the connection of the main character to their family, firstly, but then also what's going on around them,
Yes,
pictorially.
Beautifully said. Connection.
Yeah.
We're trying to connect our music to the public, but in a way we're trying to connect what it means, this sense of identity and the value of this music, how they perceive it. And so that's a whole new layer of trying to hear this type of music and experience this kind of music. So the connection between what the family life is, and of course the stories about a young child losing his father, what that means. And the prose beautifully searches for that type of, let's say, reflection. And to hear the music portraying this reflection is absolutely just, not just meditative, but, spiritually deep.
Yeah, I think that the music in and of itself, it starts out with this like a beautiful sort of like waltzing feel, and then it goes into things that are much more evocative of an environment. The way that Barber orchestrates the piece, we go from something that's still to something that's active and observational around, where from the viewpoint of the main character. And I think it's very beautiful the way that I've always been moved by the way Barber orchestrates everything I've ever heard that he's done. But in this piece, there's such a story that's told in such an economical way, I think.
Oh,
as the conductor, I mean, what do you see as sort of like, what was Barber's gift in doing that in this piece?
It's, sometimes it's very hard to describe how the genius does it. It's like, how did you recapture that smell? It's like, you can't put your finger on it. I've done the piece twice, and every time I can't help it, but I always had this sense of like what that porch looks like in my head. The smell of the lawn, how high the grass was, and the tree that's sitting in front of the house. It's weird, and it's great because it can take your imagination somewhere, or nowhere else can you experience this except listening to music that is intended for an audience to shape you what that story is.
Yeah.
So
I feel like Barber has accomplished such a great thing in this piece of music, in not only using musical devices to create the ambiance of the piece, but also in his setting of the vocal part, which is so exquisitely done. I think it is absolutely one of my favorite American pieces of music, all pieces considered. But in terms of vocal scores, pieces for voice and orchestra, it also, to me, ranks extremely high in the entire repertoire for his artistry of setting the tone through the prose and the way that he handled all of the text for the singer.
Yes, those things I think you will experience, and I would encourage everybody to come and listen to a live performance of this, because the way Barber writes the piece of music, when it converges at the end, when the melodies all converge, you already sense, wow, this is a different setting of understanding what has happened, the knowledge of the father was tragically killed in a car accident, and the themes now have a different setting. the whole feel of the connection, and it's so deep, and like you said, Barber's one of those composers. He was not a prolific guy. I mean, he was like, I mean, write one piece a year kind of thing, but you can really sense that very much like Beethoven. He every note had such beautiful connected feeling to each other. And so it's not to be missed.
Yeah,
really.
I'm so excited that we're doing this piece because like it's been like one of my favorites my entire life. But it's just it's such a powerful piece of music, and
it is,
and it does not like just exist in and of itself. The meaning of this piece does not exist in and of itself. It exists because of our traditions and where everybody who hears this piece of music sort of experiences this. It's very, very personal, but it actually speaks in a very universal way through the text, and the painting that he's done, I think, speaks to a universal human experience. It's so powerfully.
Absolutely, yeah. It reaches far beyond the piece itself. It has that kind of universal humanitarian kind of impact, I would say, and not just in a collective sense, but in an individual way.
Yes,
you can come after the piece to think, oh wow, you reflect about your own childhood and how you have connected with your family. So it's really beautiful in that sense.
Yes. Yeah. So the William Grant Still Serenade is a piece on program that comes before Samuel Barber and sort of sets the stage for this idea of the portrait of like a summer evening in the South. I mean, like, how do you feel that William Grant Still connects to, or creates a nice setting for the Barber, for the audience?
Absolutely. I mean, I must admit, I've never conducted much of Maestro Still's work.
We did the Panamanian a couple years ago.
Yeah. And so, but this is just a charming piece, originally commissioned for the Great Falls High School in Montana, and as a 1957, and it's got wonderful folk tunes. The harmony is just so paced, eloquently, and it captures that American sound.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like maybe like taking another stuff from like McDowell in a way. And it's sort of like the melodic setting, that he does, or the way he carries melodies and paces things, and just the sort of the flavor of the music. It sort of sounds distinctly American to me.
Yes,
but it also sounds like it's not romantic. It's later than that, for sure. Yeah.
I always think of the American musical fabric as this wonderful mixture of different perspective. And we have an African American composer writing about the kind of songs that is prevalent in the culture.
Yeah.
And that is an aspect of Americana that is beautifully portrayed. And so we have Samuel Barber portraying an aspect of Americana in his own perspective. And I think that's what makes that mixture not just a compendium, but a collective, beautiful collage of what the American sound is, influencing each other.
Yeah.
Just like jazz with Gershwin, and Gershwin's jazz with different sounds with different composers, jazz composers.
Yeah.
So I think we have this kind of sound where the so-called orchestration or the orchestral music produces such different vibrant sounds between two coexisting composers at the same time.
Yeah, they are contemporaries. This is the mix of the perspectives coming into our classical, especially in this case, the orchestral tradition, is very interesting to me because they both come from such different training, and regionally they come from different parts of the country. But the perspectives mixing together, like on this program, it is, in a way, it's a conversation and a portrait of really what American music is. What is unique about American music? We have a tradition that comes from Europe that has a very rich tradition in symphonic works, or the great masters that we all know and love. But we also have music that's been on the ground level, that's been regional, that has a distinct dialect. And that music converges, you know, when you look at William Grant Still next to some composer like Samuel Barber, we can sort of see them both in contrast, but also what holds them together in the same tradition.
I think that's very beautiful what you said, the different dialects.
Yeah.
Using the same language, but it has a different dialect.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you will get to experience in the Southern Revival.
Yeah.
The different twangs.
We definitely get it. We get a lot of that sense of Zion's. I mean, that's maybe when we were just talking earlier, that's maybe like, that is an aspect of this whole program to show like it's rich and varied, it's light, it's dark, but it all basically comes together in the same sort of experience.
Yeah. So you know this you can see how just the use of a instrument like the cello, what that heroic sound can really mean between all these composers living and the past.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be, I think, a beautiful presentation of what America should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I can't wait to hear it. It's gonna be a great show. Everyone should come out to hear it and get to know these pieces a little bit better. We've got some new ones, and then we've got the Barber, which is quite well known, but certainly not, you know, certainly deserves as many listenings as possible from people, and many people will be introduced to it for the first time.
Yes, I agree. Y'all don't miss it now, you hear?
Absolutely.